I worked 2 jobs for years to cover every cent of my sister's tuition, only for her to stand up at our family dinner and sneer, "You're such a loser." So I quietly pulled the plug on her rent payments, called out her entitlement in front of everyone, and left her scrambling to explain why she could no longer afford her lavish lifestyle. When my younger sister, Lauren, gained acceptance to her dream university, our entire family celebrated it as the greatest achievement imaginable. My parents glowed with satisfaction, and Lauren was already discussing her future profession. I, however, stood quietly in the corner, mentally calculating how it would all be financed. Our parents had made it clear they lacked the funds for her education, hinting at this in family discussions. "Lauren is so brilliant, but higher education is incredibly costly these days," my mother would remark, looking at me as if I wasn't aware of the underlying message. I didn't have much. I was a mechanic, diligently saving for a home, but Lauren was my sibling, and I thought, what's the harm in assisting her? So, I contributed. Initially, it was minor things, textbooks, some groceries. Yet, it didn't stop there. Soon, I was covering her rent, utilities, and even her recreational outings when she needed to unwind. Each request for money came with a justification. "I'll repay you after I graduate," or "Mom and Dad simply can't assist right now." What made it worse was my parents' attitude, as if I were obligated to help. "Family supports family," they'd declare, as if I wasn't already working tirelessly at 2 jobs to keep them afloat. Lauren, meanwhile, behaved as if the world revolved around her. She'd post pictures of extravagant meals and weekend excursions, beaming as if she weren't living off my earnings. I kept reassuring myself this was temporary. Once she finished her degree, it would all be worthwhile. But deep down, I began to resent that my life was on hold while hers was progressing rapidly, with me covering the expenses. I had hoped things would improve once Lauren settled into her college routine. I imagined she'd recognize the extent of my support and express some appreciation. Instead, her sense of entitlement only grew. The first clear indication was her spending habits. While I was skipping meals and working extra shifts to pay her rent, Lauren was showcasing her new attire on social media: designer bags, fashionable footwear, lavish dinners, items I could never afford for myself. Initially, I tried to rationalize it, thinking perhaps she had a part-time job or was simply exaggerating for appearances. But when I questioned her about it, she casually shrugged it off. "Everyone at school dresses like that," she stated. "I don't want to seem like I don't belong." It wasn't just her financial attitude, it was everything. She treated me like an automated teller machine, never inquiring about my well-being or if I needed assistance. My parents were no better. Every time I tried to discuss my difficulties, they'd pressure me into silence. "She's your sister," my mother would say. "She's building a future. You should be proud to help her." But it wasn't just helping, it was sacrificing. My weekends disappeared, my savings dwindled, and that house I'd always envisioned? Forget it. Meanwhile, Lauren couldn't even bother to send a thank you note. Instead, she'd call to complain about her professors, her coursework, or her roommates. She never once asked how I managed to balance 2 jobs just to sustain her. The resentment I had suppressed began to surface. I was tired of being treated as if my life didn't matter as long as hers was progressing. The turning point occurred when Lauren casually mentioned her interest in studying abroad for a semester. She didn't even ask if I could afford it. She simply presumed I could manage. "I believe it would be such a wonderful experience," she said over the phone, her tone light and unconcerned. "The program costs a bit more, but it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, right?" I sat there, clutching the phone, trying to comprehend what she had just said. I could barely keep up with her regular expenditures, and now she wanted me to finance a semester overseas? When I raised the issue with my parents, hoping they'd finally see reason, they reinforced her idea. "This is an incredible chance," my mom exclaimed. "You'll figure it out. You always do." I was stunned. No acknowledgement of my hard work, no concern for my welfare, just the expectation that I would continue to sacrifice because, apparently, that was my role in the family. Simultaneously, Lauren's conduct became unbearable. She'd call to grumble about the most trivial matters, like her roommate borrowing her shoes or the campus cafeteria lacking genuine lattes. She also started making subtle digs at me. She'd laugh about my constant work and joke that I was married to my job. She doesn't appreciate you, a coworker remarked one evening when I was complaining during a break. You go above and beyond, and she acts like you owe her. For the first time, I began to wonder if they were right. A family dinner was meant to be a relaxed gathering. My parents had invited me to catch up, and Lauren was home for a school break. I didn't want to attend, but I figured I could endure. A few hours. When I arrived, the atmosphere was already strained. My parents were doting on Lauren, inquiring about her classes, her social life, and if she needed anything else for school. I sat quietly, waiting for anyone, to ask how I was doing, but of course, that never happened. Halfway through dinner, Lauren started discussing the study abroad program again. She went on and on about how fantastic it would be and how all her acquaintances were doing it. She looked directly at me and said, I hope you're prepared for a little extra effort, big brother. These programs aren't cheap. I froze. I couldn't believe she had the nerve to say that in front of everyone, as if it were a foregone conclusion. Perhaps you should get a part-time job, I suggested, attempting to keep my voice light. Lauren laughed. Me, a part-time job? That's humorous. I'm too occupied with school. That was it, the breaking point. I set down my fork and stared at her. You're joking, right? You think I'm just going to keep funding your lifestyle indefinitely while you do nothing? The room fell silent. My parents looked at me as if I had sworn at the dinner table. Lauren's jaw dropped, but she quickly recovered. What's your issue? She snapped. You've always been so resentful. Just because your life isn't progressing doesn't mean you have to take it out on me. That struck me like a physical blow. After all I had done for her, sacrificing my time, my money, my aspirations, this was how she perceived me. A failure. Her words lingered in the air like a slap. I could feel my anger rising, but I wasn't going to let her have the final word. Resentful. I repeated, leaning forward. You think I'm resentful because my life isn't progressing? Lauren, my life isn't progressing because I was too busy financing yours. My parents immediately defended her. That's inappropriate, my mom said, her voice sharp. You're her brother. It's your responsibility to support her. My responsibility? I repeated, letting out a bitter laugh. When did it become my responsibility to work 2 jobs so she could live in luxury? When did it become my responsibility to sacrifice my entire future so she could have hers handed to her effortlessly? Lauren folded her arms and rolled her eyes. Oh, there it is, she muttered. The martyr act. That was it. I was finished. You know what? I declared, standing up. Go ahead and call me a failure, Lauren, but at least I worked for everything I possess. What have you accomplished? Nothing. You sit around spending my money while pretending you're superior to me. I turned to my parents. And you too are no better. You've encouraged her selfishness at every turn, and I'm done playing along. I'm not paying for anything anymore. Not her rent, not her tuition, nothing. The silence was profound. Lauren's face turned pale, and for the first time, she appeared genuinely stunned. You can't do this, she said, her voice trembling. How am I supposed to manage? Figure it out, I said, grabbing my jacket. I've been doing it for years. Perhaps it's time for you to learn. I departed that dinner feeling a mix of fury and liberation. For the first time, I had asserted myself, but I knew the repercussions were coming. Certainly enough, it didn't take long. The next morning, my phone buzzed with messages and calls. First, it was Lauren. She began with passive-aggressive texts. Thanks for ruining dinner. Hope you feel good about abandoning your own sister. When I didn't reply, the guilt trips commenced. You're truly going to leave me like this after everything I've experienced? I ignored every message. If she wanted to play the victim, she could do it without me. Then my parents became involved. My mom called first, her tone dripping with disappointment. I don't know what's gotten into you, she stated. Lauren needs your help. She's your sister. She's been my financial burden for years, I retorted. It's time for her to mature and take care of herself. My father was no better. He called later that day and said, You're being selfish. You're punishing her for no reason. What's she going to do now? Get a job, I said flatly, like the rest of us. The real shock came later that week when I received a call from Lauren's landlord. Apparently, she had informed him that I was the one who paid her rent, and when the payment didn't go through, he came straight to me. She's not my concern anymore, I told him. You need to speak with her. That conversation must have been a wake-up call for Lauren, because a few days later, she appeared at my apartment unannounced. She looked disheveled and frantic, a stark contrast to the confident, entitled person I was accustomed to seeing. "You can't just cut me off," she said as soon as I opened the door. "Yes, I can," I replied, leaning against the door frame. Lauren stood there, shifting from foot to foot, like a child caught in a falsehood. She wasn't used to hearing no from me or anyone else for that matter. "You don't understand," she began, her voice rising with desperation. "If you don't assist me, I'm going to lose my apartment. I can't just return home. Mom and Dad don't have space for me." "Not my concern," I stated flatly. Her jaw dropped. "Not your concern? You're my brother. And for years, I've been more than that," I replied, stepping forward. "I've been your safety net, your bank, your excuse to avoid growing up. I worked 2 jobs so you could live your dream, and the one time I asked for respect, you called me a failure. So no, Lauren, it's not my concern anymore." She blinked as if she couldn't believe what she was hearing. "I didn't mean it like that," she stammered. "I was upset, and I just wasn't thinking." "You never think," I shot back. "You never think of anyone but yourself. You used me. You used Mom and Dad. And now you're panicking because you finally have to face the repercussions." Then she started to weep, big, dramatic sobs that might have swayed someone else, but I wasn't falling for it anymore. "You're not going to guilt me into changing my mind," I said. "You need to figure this out for yourself. Get a job, manage your money, do whatever it takes, but leave me out of it." She didn't like that answer. "You're being cruel," she snapped, wiping away her tears. "You're supposed to help family. That's what family does." "No," I said, my voice firm. "Family supports each other. They don't exploit each other and call it love. And until you realize that, don't bother coming back here." I closed the door, cutting off the excuse she was about to make. For the first time, I felt in control of my life again. After closing the door on Lauren, I braced myself for the aftermath. She wasn't the type to suffer in silence, and I knew she'd try to turn this into a sad story for our parents. Indeed, they called me the next day, furious. Mom started with the usual guilt trip. "How could you do this to your sister?" she demanded. "She's struggling, and you abandoned her when she needed you most." I didn't hold back. "Struggling? She's been living off my earnings for years while acting like she's royalty. Perhaps it's time she understood what struggling truly entails." Dad chimed in next, accusing me of being heartless and ungrateful for all they had done for me. This part made me chuckle. "Ungrateful?" I said. "You're joking, right? I've been funding Lauren's lifestyle while you two sat back and applauded her as if she were the next big sensation. Meanwhile, I've been working tirelessly just to keep her comfortable." The more I articulated it, the calmer they became. By the end of the call, they had nothing to say except that I was tearing the family apart. As for Lauren, her breakdown was dramatic. She filled her social media with vague posts about individuals who only care about themselves and feeling let down by those closest to you. She even had the audacity to launch a GoFundMe page for her rent, claiming she'd been caught off guard by an unexpected expense. Her friends commented with feigned concern, asking if there was anything they could do to help, but the donations barely trickled in. Apparently, people weren't as eager to support her lifestyle as she had hoped. Meanwhile, news of the drama spread through the family rapidly. My aunt called to say she'd heard I was being unreasonable, but after I explained the situation, she quickly changed her opinion. "She truly expected you to keep paying her rent?" she asked in disbelief. "Welcome to my world," I replied. After my parents appeared at my door, I realized just how extensive this entire situation had become. It wasn't just Lauren's entitlement anymore. It was the entire family enabling her, treating her problems as if they were mine to resolve. They didn't stop at guilt. My mother began to spread the narrative that I had failed Lauren and the family. I heard from cousins and relatives I hadn't spoken to in years, suddenly chiming in with messages like, "It's not fair to let her struggle," or "Family comes first." But as the days passed, Lauren's facade of control began to crumble. I heard from mutual friends that she had moved back in with my parents after being evicted. Of course, that wasn't enough for her. She made it clear that she expected to be pampered there too. One friend told me she'd overheard Lauren complaining about the food at home. "She's upset that her parents don't prepare proper meals for her," my friend said, laughing. She even joked that they should hire someone to take care of her since you're not around to do it anymore. Hearing this only solidified my decision to sever ties. If my family wanted to encourage her behavior, that was their choice, but I wasn't going to keep exhausting myself for someone who couldn't even show basic gratitude. Lauren's downward spiral continued. She moved back in with my parents, who coddled her like a helpless child. They indulged her every desire, using what little savings they had left to support her lifestyle. Meanwhile, they intensified their blame on me for her predicament, acting as if I had committed some egregious offense by cutting her off. I heard from relatives that Lauren was still spreading falsehoods about me, telling anyone who would listen that I had abandoned her during a difficult period. She conveniently omitted the part where she'd been exploiting me for years while flaunting her privilege as if it were her birthright. But her downfall wasn't just financial, it was social. News of her GoFundMe scam spread, and the same friends who once joined her for fancy dinners now avoided her phone calls. Without me covering the costs, she had nothing to offer them. The climax arrived when my parents called me in a panic. Apparently, Lauren had accumulated credit card debt in their name, maxing out the limit to fund a shopping spree. They begged me to help, claiming they couldn't make the payments on their own. I couldn't help but laugh. After all their defending, enabling, vilifying me, they had the audacity to come crawling back. This is your problem to resolve, I told them firmly. You chose to support her. You chose to ignore her behavior, and now you're dealing with the consequences. For once, they didn't argue. Perhaps they finally realized that I wasn't going to intervene and rescue her, as I had so many times before. That was the last I heard from either of them. I moved forward with my life, concentrating on building my future without their incessant drama weighing me down. It took years to mend the damage they had caused, but I emerged stronger from it. As for Lauren, the last I heard, she was still residing with my parents, trapped in the same cycle of entitlement and excuses. Part of me felt sorry for them, burdened by her selfishness, but mostly I felt relieved. They had made their bed, and now they could lie in it.